segment of the show for today. The topic is current political and social situations on the continent of Africa, and we're talking to Dr. LMadu3. Now, Dr. LMadu3, I think you've already indicated that things are much better in Africa than they have been in a long time, and let's continue our conversation.
Yeah, like I was saying, these elections this year, have been watershed, in a lot of African countries, and also in Togo, they had their election this year, which was adjudged to be free and fair by the European Union and other international organizations. President Nyasimbe, got re-elected for that 5-year term. Next year, some important elections are coming on. Nigeria will be voting in April for president and senatorial and, legislative seats. As you know, President Yaradua, died earlier this year, and Goodluck Jonathan, who was vice president, took over as president. And now Jonathan wants to run, for the next
president
as president come in April on his own. But he's been challenged, by some very powerful contenders. Former military president Babangida wants to run again. Former vice president under Obasanjo, Mr. Abubakar, wants to run. And the former spy chief of the country, General Guzo, wants to run under the PDP, People's Democratic Party platform. And then, of course, you have the former president, too, General Muhammad Buhari, who also wants to run. So it's going to be a very interesting elections, for the country next year. And hopes are and indications are that the election will be free and fair, given the tensions and, things at stake. Also in Uganda, there will also be an important election next year in Uganda. President Museveni wants to run for re-election. He's been in power since 1985, and still he wants to continue. Yeah, a few years ago when he wanted to run, in fact, a lot of European countries wanted to break relations with Uganda because they thought it's time for him to go.
Since 85?
Yeah, he's been there since Milton Obote was overthrown. He's been there, since 1985 and has not given any indications of leaving office. So he wants to run again next year. But the person challenging him this time has a lot of credibility, so it's going to be interesting. Mr. Olara Otunu. He was former United Nations Under-Secretary for Children and also former ambassador to United Nations for Uganda. He's running under the UPC banner, which was a party of former President Obote. So those are two interesting elections coming up next year. In Burkina Faso, President Compaoré also wants to run for re-election. But he's been in power since 1987, and doesn't want to give up either, and has gained a reputation for having his opponents, killed. Yeah, and he came to power over the body of his best friend, Thomas Sankara. He was the person who organized the overthrow and assassination of Thomas Sankara in 1987. Sankara was his best friend since childhood, and
but it didn't seem to matter.
Exactly, it didn't seem to matter. Thank you. It didn't seem to matter when it came to that. He cold-bloodedly, assassinated Thomas Sankara. So he's going to be running for re-election again next year, and indications are that he will win. Those who are opposing him, won't get anywhere anyway. That's the belief in Burkina Faso and national circles.
It's best to just let him have the election. Well, now, how many years would he have if he were to? Is there
5 years?
Another 5-year term?
Yeah, constitutions normally have those time, but either they change it themselves or they just keep running. And whomever wants to run, you get arrested and detained, for some spurious excuses. Then after the elections, you get released, So that's what they do. Yeah, they have, like Museveni, his term is normally 5 years, but every 5 years he runs again, intimidates his opponents and moves on. Now in Central Africa, you have General Bozize, General Francois Bozize. Yeah, he wants to run for, re-election as president of Central African Republic. He's one of the few remaining military heads of state or dictators, as we call them, you know, in Africa. He overthrew the former, you know, president, you know, who was civilian elected and took over. So now he wants to run for re-election again. Then you have President Yayi Boni in Benin Republic, who's also running for re-election next year. Benin Republic is remarkable because it's one of the most stable and democratic countries in Africa, where elections are held and you know it's free and fair. So he holds that really in the West Africa region. Benin comes first.
It seems to me that all these individuals who wish to run for president, have they ever thought in terms of trying to run for president as a democratic, you know, to try to bring about democratic changes in there? Are there any reform candidates ever running for president in Nigeria? In any of these aspects? I don't mean to be facetious, but you know, I mean, oftentimes, you know, people want to improve things and et cetera, rather than just
sitting there as president.
Sitting in the office.
That's correct. Your question is very relevant, and really, and that's the problems a lot of the countries are having in Africa. It's not that they don't have the materials, people to do it. They do. But a lot of those who want to get into politics get frustrated out of it because of what they see. You know, sometimes they have to rig it. Sometimes they have to give people money to change, you know, results without even you know, counting the votes, all those things. So a lot of, you know, Africans who have the intellect, you know, to change things, like you said, bring out reforms and changes, are sidelined, or they are scared of even getting into that arena because they know, you know, it's life and death.
Life and death.
Yeah, either you're getting killed or you just get arrested on this and thrown in jail for all that. Yeah, so that's a very good question. Yes, a lot of them want to be president, want to be vice president, want to be prime minister, just to sit there and do nothing. Yeah, you see, normally you'll expect somebody who wants to be president to have some ideas of how to bring changes, improve things,
feed folks.
Exactly, feed folks, build schools, build hospitals, you know, and let people know what the government is planning to do in the next 4, 5 years, 6 years. You never hear that. Like those running for election in Nigeria now, you can ask any of them to give you a manifesto. What is he going to do? How many schools are you going to build in the next 5 years when you're in power? You know, how are you going to improve the electric situation in the country in the next 5 years? How many jobs are you going to create in the next 1 year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years? You know, how many places are going to have schools? You know, none of that. Up till now, I've been searching none of that. They just want to be president. And because they have a population, you know, that is not very, very politicized or not very well educated, you know, to read between the lines, then they can get away with it. Most of them won't even debate, you know, to come on TV and sit and debate each other, let people hear them talk and say, no, no. A lot of them hide away from those things because they don't even have any ideas to tell the people. Okay?
Only thing they want to do is to be president or be
that's correct.
Or whatever.
Yeah, intimidate people and be president, commander-in-chief of the armed forces and all that day in and day out, you know. But tell them to give you a broad, strategic, you know, proposals of how you're going to change things. Like now, people in Nigeria want constant electricity, constant power. None of them have said, this is how I'm going to do it in the next 5 years. Every village has, you know, will have lights. None of that, okay? Schools, a lot of schools now, a lot of students are on strike, okay? Now, by the time they go back to school, it will be 1 semester or 2 gone. How are you going to stabilize those kind of situations so these things don't continue happening? Water. The country has huge water resources. How are you going to make sure that everybody in 5 years while I'm in power has at least, you know, some water. Exactly, some water. None of these kind of things. And in most of the African countries, the same. The politicians don't address the issues that people want to know. So that's very important.
And of course, Dr. LMadu, we're coming to the end of the show for today. And what we're going to have to do is to have you back and to talk about the United States initiatives toward Africa, because I think that too is important. But I think what you've already laid out here is that Africa is coming back, but once many of these individuals who are more concerned about their own personal political involvement develop some kind of initiative dealing with the people, you see, then I think that we'll see a better situation in Africa. But I certainly want to thank you and tell you how much we appreciate you coming by and giving us that information. And let me encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you and good morning.